Hey y'all, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. So I recently went in for my biannual pap smear and to discuss the results of my lab work for my annual physical that I just had a couple of months back. And as the nurse practitioner was reviewing my results, all I could key in on was what was missing. So today I want to talk to you all about the importance of advocating for self, and I also want to remind you of the fact that both you and your doctor bring something very significant to the table. What is that, you ask? Glad you asked. So the doctor brings their expertise. You, as the patient, bring your lived experience, and together you form a partnership, right? I'm gonna put a pin in that, and we're gonna come back, because now I want to take a moment to shout out my day ones who have been with me from the beginning. To say that I appreciate y'all is an understatement. I am so thankful for y'all. And I also want to welcome in those of you who are just visiting my channel for the first time. Welcome. Just so you know, this is a space where we explore and unpack midlife issues that aren't necessarily mainstream. You know, we get into it. We get into it. So also, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe if you are enjoying the content, so the algos know that you would like to have more of it. And by all means, please make sure you share this with a sister friend, because you all know that caring is sharing, right? All right, so let's hop back in. So I was talking about how your girl was a little upset. Because I had been waiting specifically to get the results of one particular test. Now, for those of you that have been following me for a minute, you know that I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic a little while back. And so last year I had made the determination that I was going to do everything I could to get myself out of that pre-diabetic zone. So what are some things that I did? I started doing strength training 2 to 3 times a week. I also started walking after meals, and that's something I'm going to talk to you a little about later. I also tweaked my diet. I started incorporating more of the Mediterranean diet. Let's see, what else did I do? I became very intentional about my bedtime routine. Y'all, I went all in. When I go in on something, I go all in, and that's exactly what I did. So I was very anxious to get those results back, because I wanted to see if I was still in the pre-diabetic zone, or if I had worked my way out of it back into the normal healthy range, or if I had slid more into the diabetic zone. I needed to know. So as usual, let me say something. Let me rephrase this. I, for a moment, defaulted into my old pattern. I got quiet. When I would get upset, I would just get quiet. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, no. You're going to use this opportunity. You're going to be mature, and you're going to use this opportunity to advocate for yourself, right? So I decided that I was going to, again, remind the doctor that I really need to have the A1C test included in my next round of the next request for my lab work. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going for broke. I also want you to include a lipid panel. And you're probably wondering, what's a lipid panel? Why do you need a lipid panel? I felt the need to request a lipid panel because a lipid panel, what it does is it shows you what is taking place, how your arteries are functioning. It's letting you see if there's any plaque that's building up in your arteries. And as someone who is at risk for heart disease, I saw the need to have that test done. So I spoke up for myself, because all I could hear in the back of my brain was, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. So I thought, you know what, the worst that could happen is she shoots me down. Well, not shoots me down. Is the worst that could happen is she could say, I'm sorry, that's not something we can do right now. And I would have had, you know, I would have dealt with that. So I decided to advocate for that. And you know what? Y'all know what? She included it. So unfortunately, I have to fast again, and I had to schedule another appointment for my lab work. Wasn't happy about it, but you know, it is what it is, right? So I didn't get the pushback that I was expecting to get, and that was good. And there's another thing. Sometimes we build things up way more than we should in our head, and we imagine the conversation is going to be even more challenging than it really is. And a lot of times it never does. So I learned a valuable lesson in all of this. And here's another thing I want to say while we're on the subject of advocacy. Advocacy is not about being confrontational. That's how I used to think about it, honestly, y'all. Honestly, I used to think of it as being confrontational. If anything, it's more about self-care and making sure that you get what you need, right? And at the beginning, I talked about, and I want to reiterate this, the doctor. Yes, the doctor has the expertise. They've gone to school for a number of years. They've got the title. They have the expertise. But you as the patient, you have the lived experience. You know your body better than anybody else, right? So when the two of you come together, you form a partnership. The doctor needs to be able to extract information from you. You need to extract information from the doctor, and you work together as a team. And I think that's something that I started to finally come to realize much later in life. And so I approach my doctor's appointments a lot more differently now. I make sure I am noting or note-taking, you know, things that I'm experiencing. And so, you know, when I go to the doctor, I've got my, you know, my blood pressure readings. I'm letting her know, you know, how I'm sleeping. I'm letting her know, you know, about my diet and all of that. And I feel like it makes her job much easier. And so anyway, I think I've covered everything. But I do want to invite you all to make sure, or invite you all to check out the next video that I drop, because in that video I'm going to talk about what occurred, or what I had to go through prior to my lab appointment, and what actually happened on the day of my appointment for my labs. So stick around. So earlier I talked about one of the lifestyle changes that I adopted within the past year was walking after meals. About 10 to 30 minutes after meals, I started walking because I became aware of the many benefits that it offered. Just to name a couple, walking after meals boosts your metabolism. It reduces insulin spikes, which is super important to me. And it supports your cardiovascular health. And also, I'm speaking for me, just getting out in nature, it just gives me time to think and enjoy nature. All right, y'all. As always, continue leaning into the woman you are becoming. And I'll see y'all next time. Love you. Peace.